please join us. Thank you. All right, meeting minutes from our prior meeting, August 24th. Does anyone on the commission have any questions or comments? I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right, next up, our consent agenda. So there were two addresses on the consent agenda, 732 Hamilton and 506 Glen Mary. Matt or James, would you like to speak to either of those?
Yeah, the sites look great. They looked, the plans had all the protection they needed, and some of the other agenda items that were no trees being removed, James and I didn't feel comfortable consenting them just because we didn't see some of the details, and we thought the group as a whole should see that.
Understood. Sounds good. And just to confirm, both of those addresses, no trees to be removed, just some dirt being moved around.
Correct.
All right. Anyone have any questions? All right. I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Moving on to new grading permits. We do have a order shuffle, just one. We're going to move up the Strathmore Road project to number 1, and then we'll continue on the normal order. So do we have someone from that address here tonight? Stratford. I'm sorry, Dave. Stratford.
Thanks very much. Dave Falcone here on behalf of the applicant for the project, which you have all have seen a slightly different iteration of this project. Previously, since we were last here with you, the applicant has acquired additional lots on site. They're the 4 that you see. This is St. Honore, and it's located on Eagle Road and Stratford Avenue. But the 4 new lots that are shown on this plan are a result of the acquisition of 3 properties down along Stratford Avenue. So with the acquisition of those properties, the applicant has changed the layout of the plan and resubmitted to the township. And so what you see tonight is a slightly revised layout insofar as we've added this component towards the bottom of the plan. The initial plan at the top remains basically the same. But from a shade tree perspective, we have with us tonight our landscape architect as well as our tree expert and our engineer. So they are all significantly smarter than I am on this topic, so I will gladly hand the microphone over to Bern Panzak to start the discussion. Certainly, if anything else comes up later that I can speak to, happy to jump up and add my 2 cents.
Good evening, Bern Panzak, landscape architect for the project. You know, as Dave had said, you've seen this a number of times. The top half of the project has not changed, and there's been acquisition of the properties along Stratford. So in doing that, what we've been able to do is combine some of the stormwater into a common stormwater basin, which is located on open ground in this area in the center of the site. And what that's allowed us to do is to eliminate some stormwater management basins that were located in the backs of lots 1 through 4. And what that's also done is it's taken some pressure off of some of the trees that were in and along that property line and off-site as well. So we've been able to eliminate those basins, move that into a common system, and I think, do a better job at grading and impacts to existing trees, both on and off the site in that area. We've been before you in the past, and we've talked about the street tree design and arrangement along the new cul-de-sac road. In the past, we grouped 3 different species together. This plan integrates all of those trees in a mixed planting. It eliminated the very upright Regal Prince oak and has brought in a seedless sweet gum tree into the mix with the Platanus and the other Bohall maple. So that's a change since the last time we were before you. Most of the rest of the property line buffer with the West Avenue properties has stayed the same. The evergreen trees interspersed with the street trees along that line. And, you know, we've, of course, gone through the mathematics of the ordinance, the street tree requirements, the buffer area that's required along the Eagle Road frontage, street tree requirements along Stratford, and, of course, the tree replacement requirements, and have, you know, calculated there's 165 removals, and by our count, there are 289 replacement trees that will be arrayed around the site to work within the open ground that was discussed. There's an open lot here between the 2 different street frontages. So many trees have been placed in that area. Of course, the street trees on both streets and along Eagle, the buffer trees in here, as we've discussed, and then really a complement of you know, inter-unit landscaping for privacy and screening between the units in each case for the most part, and you know, around the backs of units that are adjacent to other properties. We've also worked and met with neighbors on a couple of occasions. We've talked about you know, trees and screening along their properties, and you know, we think we've accomplished you know, the commitments that we've made to do you know, the right thing with respect to landscaping along the perimeter. I think that's pretty much the summation of the landscape design, and happy to answer any questions.
Sure. Thanks for that rundown. Appreciate the mixture revisions to the trees along the street per our request last time. The last time we reviewed these plans, there were a couple of heritage trees you know, that were significant. In the new area of the 4 additional homes, can you speak to some of the larger 30-inch and larger trees that exist in there and what you're doing to try and save those if possible?
We've got our arborist, Steve Schreiner, here, and I'd like to invite him to comment about some of the conditions of the trees that I think you're referring to.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Good evening.
Evening, Steve.
So a couple concerns that we had were the adjacent trees adjoining this property here. And that was one of the benefits of being able to have a stormwater retention basin back here, eliminating these. So really there's going to be no encroachment on the root systems of those trees, are very minimal. We're also going to leave some of the smaller trees in that area where typically we would take them out. We're going to just leave them in place where we can. So specifically, there's an American elm, which we discussed briefly, that obviously we're going to care for in all matters of preventing Dutch elm disease and keeping that tree healthy. The adjoining property has a large Katsura tree. It is in decline, but it's still a nice specimen and a tree that we're going to care for, as well as a hedge maple adjacent to it. Is also in significant decline with decay, but obviously it's the neighbor's tree, so we're going to really attend to preserving and not impacting the root system of those trees. We'll go in pre and post with fertilization on those trees, as well as the large black walnut tree in the back corner. We'll address. There are a number of neighboring trees off this side here that we'll also treat and protect with fencing, as well as a Norway spruce. There's a large white pine over on those sides. So Kaz is a big proponent of caring for trees on his sites, trying to keep as many trees when practical, and he also has a high regard, obviously, for the adjacent neighbors as well. And whatever needs to get done, we address and handle. So.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. Does anyone on the commission have any questions for Steve?
Yeah, is there a tree table in here?
There,
What's
page
coming out and what's being replaced? I
page
couldn't find
16,
one.
Frank.
Not a table per se. There's the demolition plan, sheet number 3 of 20, which shows the trees to be removed.
I am seeing on page 16 there is a table that shows removals and replacements.
16?
Mm-hmm.
Is
That
that
breaks-
LP1 or LP1?
Let's take a look, zoom out here. Yes, LP1.
Okay. Yeah, that's, it's set up as a, a compliance chart based on, the ordinance section 263-4. It lists all the removals within the categories, the 3 categories that are regulated, and it shows the amount of replacement trees required as a result.
Yeah, I would deem that format acceptable. So 228 replacements required, and you are planting 228, 56 of those being large canopy trees. I know last time we were trying to coordinate a site visit, and we weren't able to get that done. Personally, I think this is a big enough project where I would still want to visit the site before we make any motion tonight, but I'm happy to hear anyone else's thoughts on that.
I think that's appropriate. And there's some neighbors, I think, would have actually reached out to us to get the word if there was going to be a visit. So I just think it's the right thing to do. It's hard to see actually what's going on from the road. So our site visits have always been beneficial to the process. So I would say that would be a good idea.
I guess I would just say that we've been here in last month, and we've tried to move this process forward, and it was our hope to leave with a recommendation tonight.
Sure, understood. But we were reached out 2 business days before the meeting for a site visit, and we need at least a week to make that happen.
Right.
Before we move on to any public comment that may be here tonight, does anyone have any other questions? I was looking at the species of trees, and you had spoke to the changes of those per our recommendations previously, and they all look good to me. But James, did you get a chance to look at them or have any comments?
did look at it, but I don't remember, and I can't pull it up right now.
Okay.
I'd say we're predominantly a native species. Yes, very, very similar, just the reduction of the oak and the replacement with the sweet gum.
I also think we have time for a site visit because this group was before planning last month, and we tabled because the traffic study wasn't available. So they're coming before planning again. Dave, do you know when you're going to?
So we're hoping to be in October.
Okay,
That's the hope.
that's Monday.
That's the hope, that will be on Monday's agenda.
Okay, so you would add to the, okay. But anyway, I still think we have some time here for.
It looks good. Except the Regal Prince isn't joining.
It's no longer part of the plan,
Can we
right?
set up a site visit while we're all here and the applicant is here and like get that on the calendar so we can move the process forward?
Let's do that offline only because I just know trying to align calendars right now might be tough. But can you commit to a site visit over the next couple of weeks? We'll work offline to make that happen.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Is evening, late afternoon?
So, as you know, we're all volunteers here, so daytime jobs. So usually evenings or weekends, I know obviously everyone has their own personal time, but if we could set up something early evening or weekend time frame, that would be the best. Okay. Any public comment for this project? All right. Yes, please. If you could come up, state your name and your address, and we'll discuss as necessary.
My name is Stacy Morgan, and I live at 424, which is contiguous to this property. Do you guys have? I know, but you don't have the. It's right here. Okay, so I have a large face on contiguous to the property, and I had a little bit of time to look at the redevelop things from the website. And one of the things I noticed now is, again, I'm concerned about the lighting. We've talked about that in the past. That's not you. There's also a fire hydrant location that I just saw that I'm a little concerned about and where it's located. But I'm here to talk about the trees because you're Shade Tree Commission, and I didn't know if the Site Commission had gone out. I called several times to be part of that, so I definitely want to be part of that, as I mentioned to Matt the last time. I didn't have an email. I was trying to get that from the Township, and they kept putting me to somebody else. So, I just want to exchange emails so I can be part of the site visit. Again, one of the things that keeps happening, which I think is interesting, is they've demarcated some trees on other properties, but one of the largest trees is in the corner right here in my property, and it's a pine, and it's 8 feet in circumference, and I know you have to do the DBH at a certain height, and I factored that in, and it ended up being the DBH for the pine tree was 30.6 inches, and it's very close to the edge. So I am concerned about that. I've expressed that concern before. And again, the American elm here that is supposedly 3 trees, I believe it's 2. And I've done the DBH on those trunks. And that is what I'd like to see on the site visit looked at. Because to me, it makes the criteria for a heritage tree. So that's my concern. And I know that it affects their planning, but one of the things that keeps coming up with a lot of people is the stormwater. And they've added more houses, and the stormwater seems to be like in this area now. So the natural flow of the land goes down. I don't understand how it's going to curve and get caught up over here. I guess I don't. I don't know if there's collection and it's pumped back up here. Again, I looked at the plan and I didn't really get to really study it, but I did the best I could before coming tonight.
Well, at the Planning Commission meeting last month, the engineer went over the stormwater management with a lot of public comment. It was a very satisfactory presentation.
Okay,
They're going to hold all the stormwater on the site.
Okay. And was that a date, that was the separate date?
Yeah, it was the September Planning Commission meeting. So
Okay.
you could watch that. It's on,
Oh, I can watch that, okay.
it's on the-
Oh,
it's
that's
on our
true,
Radnor-
right, okay. So that's really, those are my concerns, and I looked at the tree a little more, and I think that they have it here, but the drip line actually seems bigger than what they have marcated after I took measurements.
Okay.
So just keep me in the loop for the site visit. for
Do
sure.
we have your email so we can
I gave
communicate?
it to Matt, but my
Oh, you have it, Matt?
concern,
All right,
my
good.
concern is that I would like to have email, so that I can send something so everybody has it correctly, okay?
Yeah, we can have you coordinate with Leah,
Okay.
and we'll get that going. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yep.
So I think we spoke to the American elm before, but the pine I haven't heard previously. Do we know which one that is, and could we speak to it briefly, the 30-inch?
Yes, there's a manhole cover here, and we did address it when we took a walkthrough with Sally. And we're going to make the accommodations with tree protection around that tree. Her concern was that there was going to be, excavation trying to tie into that existing sewer area. My understanding is that's not part of the project, so that root system of the tree won't be affected by development, but we're still going to go through with the protection, and I assured her of that we would be on site.
Sounds good.
Yeah,
I do recall now, there were pictures and some things that we took a look at, so.
yeah.
Thank you.
It's
Okay.
Stacy, sorry. I once dated a girl named Sally. Sorry about that. So, yeah,
Perfect.
good.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hi, everyone. Gretchen Grobel with Radnor Conservancy. I did have a couple of questions. I looked through the plans on the agenda tonight, and I did not see any existing tree conditions that shows what trees are slated to come out. Usually, they're marked with a circle and an X. I'm just curious, are those in the current plans with the 14?
Yeah, it's this sheet here.
Okay.
The red
Okay,
X's.
but is this sheet up in the packet?
Yeah, that's.
It is.
What, is that LP?
Sheet 3 of 20.
Sheet 3, okay.
Yeah, it's within the
Sheets.
engineering set, the
Okay,
demolition,
okay, and-
land development plan.
And does this specifically say, does it give the size and the species?
Yep, DBH
Okay.
and species are marked.
Okay, so the trees are marked to come out that are with a red X, okay. And so that's 165, is that correct?
Correct.
Just curious about you're going up against a lot of different neighbors, and I was just curious if, what are the standards for buffers? On these neighbors here, and then along Eagle and Stratford.
So there are no shade tree specific ordinance requirements for buffering, but there are some considerations when it comes to land development. And I know during planning, some of those thoughts were brought up.
Okay. And just curious, I mean, just looking at the plans, it just seems like there's a lot of impervious. There's a lot of driveways. And I know that probably Shade Tree doesn't look at impervious coverage, but who does look at that? Is that planning? Okay.
Like I was saying to Stacy, the last planning commission meeting extensively reviewed the stormwater management, which has been adjusted by the applicant several times, and they're keeping all the water on the property. And an engineer in the audience gave them a thorough review, and I was satisfied.
Okay. Well, I know that, I mean, if you just look around the area, there's a ton of impervious. There's a lot of asphalt across the street. And I know that downhill neighbors have stormwater issues. So, it is important to pay attention to.
There was no stormwater management on this property before.
Okay. Well, it's called trees, and 165 of them are coming down. And I do really think it's important, and I would like to be a part of the group that goes out, if you wouldn't mind. And I do think it's important that the entire Shade Tree Commission be there on the site visit, including John Hosbach. I know I had spoken to him about this. So, thank you.
Sure. Thank you, Gretchen. Yeah, there are limitations to how many of us can go out at once due to the Sunshine Act, but we will coordinate as we can.
I'll just note
Sure.
Last comment. So there's no relief being sought for impervious coverage on this project. It's a compliant project.
Thank you, Dave.
And there's also no relief being sought for plantings. So we're totally compliant in our replantings at 298.
Sure. Thank you. Any other public comment? Okay. Any other comments from commissioners? So I will make a motion to table this until our next Shade Tree Commission, contingent upon us taking a site visit and understanding, the outcome of the next Planning Commission as well. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So getting back to the top of the list, do we have anyone from 816 Gaylor Post with us tonight? Good evening. If you could just introduce yourself, the project, your relation to the project, and run us through anything trees.
Sure. My name is Amy Stassen. I'm a homeowner with my husband, Ed, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight. He's away for work. This is the final, and I think you guys have a copy of this. If I can bring this up. This is the final stage of the renovation that we were doing with our house. Happy for it to be over. So we are planning on putting a patio in our backyard, or finishing the patio, and it's going to be made up of hardscape and loose rock. Currently, we are not taking any trees down, and that's about it. Any questions?
Thank you. Yeah, so no dirt's being moved around, correct?
Right. We have any extra dirt, topsoil, we have a right there. We're going to be putting in the yard.
In regards to construction equipment that's coming in and out of your existing driveway, I'm assuming?
It is the existing driveway, yes.
Okay. Trees nearby the driveway or the construction area, could you speak to our required tree protection and if that's in place or planning to be in place?
So over here, if you look on this section, we have our neighbor, and there are no trees over there on our property. They do have trees, but it's separated by a 6-foot stockade fence, and we're not getting any closer than 10 feet to their property line. And then the only other tree that I think is 15 feet from our driveway is this one, and we're happy to put a fence around that if that's required, but I don't think that's required. And other than that, our neighbor on the other side, the project is 40 feet away from their property, so, or their tree.
And there's no trees in the backyard area near the patio and construction area.
Correct. The closest tree that we would have in our backyard is this one way up there. I think that's 100 feet away,
Got it.
approximately.
And the one that you had pointed out up front, that was on
That one?
the other side of the driveway? Okay. So mainly what we're looking for is if roots would be disturbed in any way from equipment running over them, but because that's on the driveway area, I don't necessarily see a need for tree protection, but I'll open it up for any commission comment. Anyone have any comments, questions?
Are you doing the front walkway?
No, we took that out.
That's not on there?
Yeah,
I'm
no,
sorry.
we're not doing that.
Okay. I'm not sure why was there something else with tree protection, Matt? Do you remember?
I just couldn't pick it up. I mean, even on the site visit, I couldn't visualize it, so that's why I just thought it would be better to hear from the
Yeah,
applicant.
okay.
Got it. Okay. If for whatever reason there's trucks or equipment or anything that do need to be parked near trees or anything like that, just make sure that either tree protection is put up or they just park somewhere else.
Okay, not a problem.
I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. All right. Good luck with your project.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay, do we have anyone from 724 Knox Road with us tonight? Good evening. So just state your name, relation to the project, and talk to us
Good
about
evening.
trees.
Andy Eberwein from Edward B. Walsh and Associates. We're the civil engineering design company for the addition for the project. Mr. Balk is proposing to put an addition on his home. As part of the addition, there's one tree that's proposed to be removed. It's located in the front corner of the property. It's a top grafted weeping cherry tree. And it's kind of in the way of the addition. We suggested that he have an arborist go look at it. He has. We have a letter from the arborist. It's not in the greatest of shape. And I have a picture. I hope this will show up. If not, I have 5 of them to hand out to you. That's a picture of the tree. And as you can see, there's some dead branching and a lot of things going on the top. It's really not in the best state of repair. There's also a broken branch that fell into the planting bed and into the bottom. So we're proposing to remove it. I think it's, any arborist agreed that it's past its prime. And we will do what we have to put the replacement trees in that are necessary for the size of the tree that's there. Otherwise, there is some tree protection fencing that needs to get shown in a drawing. We understand that. We will take care of all that and provide the legend on the drawing for the trees that are going to be put in to replace the one that's being removed based upon the caliper of the tree. I think it's going to probably be close to 6.
Yeah, we just had a weeping cherry that size, a grafted weeping cherry that size that we had to take down. The wards took it down, and that tree is worse than what we were dealing with. So it has no life left, really. It's not worth saving.
Agreed.
And just to confirm on the drawing, this looks like it's a 44-inch DBH.
That's the measurement our surveyors got, yes.
Okay.
We will verify that to make sure that was done at the 4.5-foot height that's required and make sure it's clear. I believe it is. That would require us to have 6 trees, I believe.
Yes, 6, 3, or I'm sorry, 4 being large canopy.
Right.
In regards to the arborist, there was a picture and there was a report. Did he?
There's actually a letter.
A letter, okay.
Yeah, and I guess I have 5 copies of it. I can hand them all out to you. If you want, I can just submit them or however you want to.
Yeah, sure. Bring them up and I'll distribute if you don't mind. We will inevitably need to get this into the record, of course, but just for review.
He measured it at 28. That's why I was saying that we need to go out and verify that. I'm not sure, because I wasn't the one doing the measuring where it was measured.
Sure. I would lean towards the arborist versus the surveyor. But
Me too.
looking at the pictures, it does look like
It's fairly large.
pretty large circumference. Got a little playhouse up top there. Can you speak to, so the addition itself, so it looks like off of the corner of the house is where the addition is going? Am I looking at that correctly?
The addition is in here.
Okay, and that's a proposed garage? Correct?
Yes.
Okay. And was there any consideration, understanding that this tree is in decline, it does look like a fair amount of canopy is repealed and may not be worth saving, but was there any thought to moving the garage somewhere else to try and save this tree?
I can't answer that because I wasn't part of a conversation that included that, but I would think that the garage is being placed where it makes the most sense given the flow of the house internally. And that would really be the only way.
Okay, and to confirm, you had mentioned that the revised plans that you plan to submit would show the replacement trees and our required tree table?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
And your detail for the tree protection fencing.
sure, okay. I have no further questions. I think what we'll need from you is the revised drawings, the arborist report. It would be nice just to make sure that that DBH is verified, whether it's 28, 44, or in between. Does anyone have any further questions, comments on the commission? Okay. You believe so? Sure. Okay. I would still like to see revised drawings with replacement plantings.
They're being worked on right now. I mean,
Okay.
we have no problem with that.
So I would make a motion to hold on approval until we receive the updated drawings, which would show our required tree table, the 6 replacement species, and their locations. Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. James, what are your thoughts?
I'm going to say no because I don't think it's not required by the ordinance. So I would approve it.
Well,
Because it's a hazard tree or?
well, it's
Well, it's a 28, it's not a heritage tree, it's 28 inch.
so the only reason I'm leaning towards,
I would table it to say, have the drawing, it says 44 now.
It needs to be verified. I would very much concur with that.
okay, so yeah, have the DBH verified. If it turns out being less than 30, then technically the 6 replacements are not required. You would just be required 4, but because it's additionally hazardous, and because it's less than our 6 in our ordinance, then technically you would not be required to do compensatory plantings. However, we would definitely highly encourage that happening. So verify the DBH, get the drawings updated, and resubmit those to the township, then we'll see you next month.
Okay?
So all of that wrapped up into a motion. There was a reformed approval. All in favor? Aye. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you for your time.
Okay, next address, 165 King of Prussia. So this is 7,500 cubic yards of dirt to be taken off-site, 0 trees to be removed. If you could just introduce yourself, relation to the project, and let's talk trees.
Good evening. I'm Jonathan Alderson. I'm the landscape architect for the project, and I'm here with John Ambrose, who's the owner's rep. This is part of the Penn Medicine Brandywine project. What you're looking at is the overall site plan, which we presented back in 2018 just to sort of orientate you towards the project. And the red dashed line is the hotel site, which is in a parking lot. There are no trees within that site that are going to be removed. There's obviously a lot of trees that were prior approved to be removed with replacements on the overall development. But this is our site. I'll just flick you through.
So Jonathan, so the X's on that sheet they've all been removed previously for the first stage of the project?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's sort of under construction as we speak. This is the overall site plan. Again, showing the hotel with the dashed line. We're actually putting in trees within that development that's over and above the 256 trees that were approved with the Brandywine Penn Medicine joint venture. And this is just an enlargement, a rendered enlargement, just showing the plan. There's actually a rain garden that's running through the center of the development between the hotel and the office building. And that's a rain garden with sweet bay magnolias and black gum. There's some flowering trees around these are little healing gardens that are associated with the hotel. And then the rest of the plantings are part of the overall development.
Okay. Jonathan, have these plans changed since 2018?
The only way they've changed is we've added more plants to the list. But the overall planting sort of on the periphery has not changed, including the 3 holly trees that are to be planted on the neighbor's property for headlights coming out of the loading dock.
Sure. And in regards to placement of the new structure, it's going in where the parking is, but where will the parking be for the hotel?
The parking is in surface parking in here. There's some ADA spaces in here, and then there's a parking garage.
Okay. And in regards to the plantings themselves, has any of that begun, or is that going to happen towards the end, I would imagine?
It would be towards the end of the
Okay.
project, yes.
Okay. Knowing that this might have been before my time, knowing that this was priorly approved, I'd imagine the only reason this is coming back before us is for grading, of course, and to get things moving. And in regards to communication to surrounding neighbors, I know that's more of a commercial area, so there's not many residential, if at all, correct?
To the best of my knowledge, we've got the school, we've got the racket club, and we've got the Scepter, and then the rest of it is our development.
Okay, and you had mentioned screening of lights for neighbors. That's just in relation to commercial neighbors, not residential neighbors, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
and the overall development was actually approved back in I think it's 18, you know.
Sure.
My memory's not serving me good
Okay.
on that one.
And in regards to the type of plantings that are being done, knowing that the pen plantings that you had planned are fabulous, is that going to coalesce with?
Yeah, the concept is that it sort of all ties together.
Okay.
Primarily native, though there are some adaptive plants on the list.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission?
Will you guys go before design review as well?
We've already have.
Oh, you have?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Good.
Well,
Because I
in
know
all
some.
transparency, we have to go back because there was a question about some of the colors of the building that we're going to revisit with planning board, or
Yeah.
design board.
Yeah, I didn't know that they actually have jurisdiction over some of the ground plants, the landscape around the building. So,
Interesting.
because you're going to have some plants inside and stuff, right? Like on patios?
Okay, so there's a couple of things that probably aren't evident, right? So.
Could
some
you
of the
speak
rare-
into the mic, please? Thank you.
Pardon me, John Ambrose with Toll Brothers. Some of the things that might not be 100% evident relative to, gentlemen, sir, I don't know your name, so excuse me, but we've got some ground floors. If you look plan north of where the hotel is, you'll see what would be identified as maybe 4 pinkish colors, both Plan East and Plan West side of the hotel. Those are going to be effectively wellness rooms that we're coordinating with Penn Medicine to make them, respite might be too much, but for the purposes of catering to maybe some of the needs of the UPenn group when they have folks coming in for surgery and they need families, there's going to be outside little quiet garden areas in that area. And I think that's part of what you're referring to.
Thanks.
Gotcha.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions? Do we have any public comment? Yes, please. Thank you. Yep, go ahead and come up. If you gentlemen don't mind stepping aside temporarily.
Hi, I'm Christina Peters of 429 King of Prussia Road, so I'm one of the nearer neighbors that you have residentially. I'm an admirer of what has already been done. I had a question regarding lighting. It's gotten super bright over there in a way that is, it's light pollution, and it's bad for the birds. And I'm wondering whether any account has been taken of that in the plan.
Thank you. I know that's a little bit outside of our jurisdiction, but of course shade trees do help with light pollution. Do you want to speak to that, Jonathan?
I mean, there are requirements for lighting the parking lots that are part of your design standards. So those had to be adhered to. I'm not really qualified to talk to what the lights are. I mean, we do have plantings, as you can see, along the periphery. We've got buffer plantings there. And that's about all I can say. I'm not qualified really to talk about the lighting. I'm sorry.
Sure. No worries. We appreciate the feedback, though.
What type of trees are going in, John? Do you have a list there? Or?
Well, we've got the list on the plan from 2018, so it's.
Do you know if there are shade trees, like larger shade trees, or
yeah,
the
there's
ornamentals?
Sycamores. There's.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we've got.
So that would probably help block
Yes,
some light.
Yeah.
Around.
Along the periphery, we've got. I think we've got maples. I'd have to look at the plan, but
Gotcha.
in the center space, we've got large sycamores.
Sure. And I do know driving up KOP, it's well lit right next to the school, so I do believe from a safety perspective, there's a happy balance that needs to be met there. So, but yeah, any large shade trees that can be planted near, any of the uplighting, that would be preferable. Okay, any other comments, questions? All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you and good luck. Appreciate it. Okay. So next on the list would be Strathmore. Thank you. My PDF was lagging behind. 369 Strathmore. Good evening.
Hi, Carrie and James Gowen, owners, and I don't have a printout, I'm sorry.
That's all right. Ian should be able to bring it up on screen. Yeah. Ian, if you're back there, can you bring up 369 Strathmore? While he's working on that, can you just speak to the project, trees? It looks like 40 cubic yards of dirt taken off site, 0 trees to be removed.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, so it's a pool in the backyard. It's a primarily flat piece of land where the pool's going, but it is a split level, so there is a grade retaining wall going in for that pool as well. I believe stormwater management, we've already, thanks.
We have Ian with magic. Thank you.
No trees being removed, and there are some big, I believe, pines way in the back, but I don't think they're on that plan because they're not within 25 feet of the pool, so.
Okay. In regards to equipment coming in and out, looks like existing driveway would be the pathway, is that correct?
Existing driveway would be the pathway, or on the left-hand side of the house facing from the street.
I gotcha.
There's a pretty big egress there too, and we brought pictures of that if it's not.
Okay, I see it now. Yep.
Yeah, on the left, there's no paved driveway, but there's like a area where you could put a driveway up coming off of the street.
Got it.
It's just a clear straight shot.
Got it, so
on the
temporary
rest.
construction.
Yeah.
Entrance, got it. The area of that temporary driveway and the area of the pool, sounds like there's no trees anywhere near there?
No.
Correct? Okay.
Yes, that's it.
James, that was the one where we thought there were trees on the property line, and we couldn't discern any tree protection, but maybe we're just flat out wrong about it.
There's trees on the right-hand side of the property line, and there's a very small tree on the left-hand side of the property line, but
But they're not going to be near any of the construction?
no.
Okay.
Nope.
Thank you, Ian. I'm just taking a quick look at satellite view just to ground myself here. Okay, yeah, I see.
Is that if you're looking at like Google?
Yeah.
It's going to be outdated.
Okay.
Our neighbor on the left side had a bunch of trees removed, which is where that's closer to where the pool would have gone.
Okay.
It's kind of irrelevant now because they're not there. Yeah.
Was it more than 6 trees, and were they healthy?
There were not more than 6 trees,
Okay.
and I don't believe.
You don't have to tell us if you
Yeah.
The neighbor did it.
But we might come drive out and take a look.
Yeah, and so there is a tree in the back, but it's not, and it's in the property line, but I think it's not on here because it's not close enough to where the pool's gonna go.
Yeah, and looking at satellite view, it looks like you have a clear shot back there, so I don't really have any concerns. Same comment as earlier, if any equipment needs to get near any trees, just make sure they do have protection or just tell them to back away. All right, any other comments? All right, I'll make a motion to approve. Do I have a second? All in favor? Aye. Good luck with your
Thank you.
project. Thank you. Okay. 1001 Eagle Road. Last but not least.
Good evening.
Evening.
That was perfect timing. I was actually standing outside there, and I said, I think we're getting close.
You nailed it.
So I think many of you are familiar with the property. We actually did a walkthrough a couple of months ago now to take a look at the overall. The plans are basically the same that we looked at before, walked through. Patrick Stewart, the landscape architect's here to go over the landscape plan, both removals and what we're proposing to do. We've updated that a little bit since our last meeting. Happy to answer any questions kind of initially, or if you'd like Patrick just to run through the landscape plans.
Sure. So a couple of items that we had discussed during the site visit. One was making sure that we had on file the trees that are going to be marked as hazardous, some form of report that was inclusive of all of those. And then additionally, I think you were going to have whichever tree company that you were using, just go back and see if there were any that we kind of identified as potentially being saved, have a relook, if you will. So if you could speak to those two things.
Yep. So as far as the full report, we had the plans. We did have I'm going to pull up the supplemental plan. So the supplemental plan, this was the red trees identified on this plan were the ones that were, dead, diseased, dying. We did not go through and create kind of a big printout of each tree. We have gone through it with the arborist, looked at each individual tree, identified those, I believe off the top of my head, and Patrick has the right number, but I believe it was 102 trees that were dead or dying, some of them are very obvious that they're completely dead and there's no leaves on them. Others, had deficiencies in either the structure or were, obviously declining to the arborist. Not my eye, the arborist eye. So that was that area. We did look at some areas of grading, pulling back some grades in certain areas, working, and I believe the area that we were really mostly focused on, or at least what I understood to be focused on, was the area right at the entry drive. And meeting the grades we need to meet for the township requirement for slopes. It cuts into the hill there, which really necessitates that widening and grading. Again, we can revisit a tree or two on the fringe, and where I'm thinking of that is the first bend. We pulled back the grading away from the tree I believe was actually being removed previously that's close to the property line. We've tried to pull that back in that area, created a wall to preserve. I think there's 2 or 3 trees right in that area. There's a house right there that's being removed, looking at the disturbances. So we have pulled back certain areas to be able to grade those out. Oh, yep.
Can you make sure your mic's on, Frank? Your mic. Is it on? Microphone. Oh, okay.
He asked me to pull. I'm sorry. He asked me to pull it down so you could see your COVID barriers are good sound blockers. Pull it down so they could see where St. David's Golf Club was.
While we're taking a look at that, I would still like to see a hazard tree report. I know it's a lot of trees, but it is something that we require for every other project. I know they're marked. They were looked at by an arborist, but we do require a report compiled by an arborist for this.
So just so I'm clear with the arborist of what they need to provide, is it, can we just have a kind of a simple summary spreadsheet of, we can label each tree 1 through 10 or 1 through 102 and say what each one is and what the deficiency is?
If you reach out to the township, Leah can provide the hazard tree report. There's things that need to be filled out and provided. In regards to making it easier for everyone to review versus just dumping a bunch of pictures into a PDF, I think filling out the hazard tree report, associating the report identified by tree numbers, map that back to the plan. I don't know that we need to have pictures of every single tree that's marked or deemed hazardous. But if we have a good collection, that coupled with our site visit, I think would be acceptable. But I'll defer to any commission members if they think otherwise.
Okay. And we can circle back to that. We can provide that. That's no problem. As far as timing, before Patrick goes, I'll kind of go over our timing of where we are. As you know, we've been at this for a while. We had a special exception. We went through Planning Commission previously. Now we're back for a preliminary final. We're going to be seeking a recommendation from both you and then the Planning Commission and ultimately the board for this project to move forward. Parallel to that, we will also be submitting lots of different permits. We have a PennDOT permit, a NPDS permit. We will have township permits. We have furthering design on architecturals. And so there will be a time period of kind of after our official approval of our land development that there's going to be lots of permitting. So for something like the report, what I'd ask is if we can do that during our permitting. I expect that we're going to be back. The plan's obviously going to change here and there. So I know we're going to be back. So what I would just ask that we're able to submit that during our next visits.
Yeah, but of course.
Rob, when you come to planning, are you going to be asking for preliminary final?
Yes, we will be.
Okay. Any other questions from the commission before we move on to public comment? Frank?
I had one. Between this plan and the previous plan that we saw, have you done anything to preserve the canopy there? Are there trees not coming down that will be?
There's a handful. I'm not sure it really impacts the canopy. Patrick Stewart can talk about it, the canopy. They've done some analysis on that to answer some of your questions. We were anticipating the canopy questions.
Okay, great. Love to hear them.
Thanks.
Yeah, go ahead, James.
There was just a couple things I wanted to go over on the tree replacement list. Was this approved before by us, or?
No, we tabled this to site visit.
Okay, because I did the rough math, and it looks like there wasn't enough large canopy trees.
If I'm gonna kick this specific question to the landscape architect.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, let's have him come up and we can chat specifics. James, what page of the plans are you on?
I just, I have the tree replacement table. I can't even see what page it is here.
No worries, I'll dig through.
Yeah, I couldn't even see with my readers on, so I had to write it out. Looking at, I'm not sure what page that is. It was after the tree protection sheet, I believe. Might be the next. Is that it?
Are you referring to the replacement tree schedule?
Yes.
Yeah. So, good evening. I'm Patrick Stewart, landscape architect for the project. The total number of tree replacement that we calculated was 270 replacement trees, and there's 125 trees that would be removed. 582 trees are scheduled to remain, and there's 106 trees that have been determined that are dead, dying, diseased. So of the 270 trees, we proposed about 14 different species of trees. We were using red maple, sugar maple, sweet birch, mockernut hickory, red bud, American beech, American hornbeam, white oak, chestnut oak, American basswood, sugar maple, London plane tree, willow oak, and Quonset cherry. I do believe you have something in your ordinance. There's a percentage of canopy.
Yeah, so what I figured was should be 130 large shade trees. And I think I counted up on the replacement table, 82 large. Now, you have whips as well, but I don't know, I wouldn't consider that part of the replacement.
Okay.
Because the ordinance says 2.5-inch caliper.
Understood. So I can explain. So when we filed this application that you have, there's two plans that we prepared. One is the plan that I was just reading from the plan schedule, which is your code requires 270 replacement trees, and this plan provides all 270 at the size that's prescribed in your ordinance. We also submitted a plan, which we called alternate township landscape plan, and on that plan, I'm going to pull it up real quick.
I'll give a little background to the alternate plan for a second. So, meeting on site, this property, I think, actually gives a little bit of a unique opportunity. There is existing canopy. There's very little, or if any, understory because of deer browse and whatever else has happened over the years. So, what we've proposed is we have two plans. One is the code-compliant plan that if you said we don't want any alternate plan, we say okay, and we do the perfectly code-compliant plan, and we can make that work. What we have proposed is a alternate plan, which is an option. It's a discussion point. Was that we were providing fewer of the code-required size of the trees, but we've provided a whole area of whips within the woodland, and then put deer protection fence around that to try to get the understory, the growth growing back. I think what you see on the site now is a declining canopy, right? We've got a lot of dead, dying, diseased trees, not because of what's happened on the site, just because of age and other factors. So this was really just a alternate plan to kind of look at the site, this unique site that we do have the opportunity in the area to be able to kind of reforest an area and supplement that rather than just put all of the code required plants in as prescribed. We can do either plan. It was just an alternate plan that we wanted to discuss. So before we confuse things, what I'd like Patrick to do is go through the code compliant plan, just so you can see all of that, and then we'll flip to the alternate plan. Just so, again, it would be something that we would need a waiver for, and if we don't get the waiver, we're not going to do the plan, right? And we'll do the code compliant plan.
So on the plan that complies with the ordinance as it's prescribed, it's 270 replacement trees that would be required. And I believe that we meet the percentage of canopy on that plan when we went to the plan schedule and looked at it.
So it wouldn't necessarily be the percentage of canopy, more so what James was talking about, which is if, depending on the size tree, we require a large canopy tree to be replaced. So if it's a 30-inch or larger, we require 4. If it's the step below, we require 2.
Correct.
So just to clarify, I think the proposed code compliant plan doesn't have the prescribed amount of large shade trees in the replacement schedule.
Some of those trees we have, we consider them as medium-size trees on the township website.
So I would say the birch, the red bud,
Yeah, I mean, they would be small to
cherry.
medium. Yeah.
So we had 3 of the species that were not canopy. Everything else, I believe, was a canopy tree per your list.
There was a yellow wood. Is there a yellow wood up there?
No.
And also, I mean, just looking at the style of table that you've proposed, typically what we like to see is the groupings of here's DBH X, Y, and Z tabled out to show the replacements that include normal trees plus the large canopy trees.
We did that on sheet L8.00, the first sheet on the submission. We have it broken down from 6 to 18-inch DBH, 19 to 29, and then 30 plus. And then we did a separate calculation for each of those categories per your ordinance to come up with the total number of replacements.
Right, but that doesn't specify the large canopy trees. So what we would want to see is that split out per the requirement.
Okay.
And then also, of course, amends the species to meet the respective large shade tree requirement.
Okay.
Any other comments from the commission? Do we want to entertain the alternate plan briefly? Doing some more understory planting.
I would
Any thoughts?
talk to John and see what he thinks about it. I think for me, I think it would be a great idea to do some whips, and I have no problem intermingling. I just brought that up because it's
Yeah,
the
sure.
ordinance there. But I think it's a good idea if there's a area that you can make even better. But I think that would.
Yeah, I agree.
would
We
feel
would want.
comfortable talking to John. He knows more, or even Steve, this guy back here. He knows more than I do. But I think that'd be a good idea.
Okay, yeah, I agree. Do you mind briefly speaking to the ecological benefits of the understory style planting and what that could look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think if we go with an option where we can use some whips and put some deer protection fencing around them in an area that's got no understory, I think the whips enable us to use some species that we normally can't find in the 2.5 to 3 inch caliper size. So I think we could increase the diversity of the plant palette that's out there today, And I think that's always a benefit because we never know what next disease is going to come and wipe out a species. So I think that would be one benefit. I think it could be a good educational area as a, we've proposed this in some townships. Sometimes they go for it, sometimes they don't. I think it's a really good tool to show other developers that may come in it can be done successfully. And here we have a great area to do it. It's a sloped area. There's no need to get back into that area. It could be a really neat success story to show how another way to deal with replacement trees instead of just putting 3-inch trees everywhere underneath big shade, canopy trees that are out there today. Because that's when we put back 270 trees, we are putting them in areas where there is canopy. So, we have to go into those areas, plant those trees. So I think this could be a neat area to do something different here.
Any other questions from the commission before we open it up for public comment? Okay. Anyone have any public comment?
Hi, it's Gretchen Grobel again. Just curious about I know I drove up there today. It's a beautiful piece of property. Are you guys, so these homes that are here, are these, I would assume they're being torn down, but are you rebuilding these? These are going to be new homes here?
So there's 5 homes that are on the proposed plan. Those that remain, they're going to be cottages. They'll be extensively renovated, but they're meant to remain where they are. Currently, there are, I believe it's off the top of my head, 24 houses on the property. We're going to keep 5 of the houses. There's 2 other structures along the driveway, and then a gatehouse out by Eagle Road, which will remain.
So coming up on this, this is a very kind of precarious turn into this driveway, and there's steep slopes. Is there a rendering that shows how many trees are coming out and then how many are being replaced in this kind of steep slope area?
So as far as the slopes go, I think of the site as basically 2 different plateaus. So you have the area closer to Eagle Road, which is relatively flat. It's sloping, but it's relatively flat in the area out toward Eagle Road. And then you go up a steeper area. Right now, the driveway goes straight up. To reduce the slope of that, we're actually adding in a little bit of a curve to increase the length. And then we have the upper plateau. So we're really developing the upper plateau area. The lower area kind of remains the same. There are plans that show which trees are all being removed throughout the area, and then the landscape plans show the areas being proposed. I can show you each one if you like.
Oh, no, that's okay. So I'm really interested in the idea of preserving as much of the canopy and the healthy trees as possible and restoring, whatever kind of woodlands you can preserve. They're, just on my drive up there today, it's a beautiful piece of property. And buffer-wise, so is this the blank spot over on the right, is this all Cabrini's property?
Correct, yes.
So this area up here is I'm just curious about any kind of like buffer plantings, or is it fairly minimal here?
So let's see here. So the area that you were pointing to was where you have the angled area. This is actually all a woodland on the Cabrini side. So this is all kind of their woodland here. They have a large stormwater basin here. Up in the upper right is their Dixon Center and athletic field. There's an existing tree line that runs in that area. Their softball field is currently where these 2 buildings are.
And I know you had mentioned red oaks, and I'm not sure if I've just have heard that red oaks are having some issues. So James, do you have any comments about red oaks as a choice for a canopy tree? No? Okay. 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 And do you guys think that there is a good mixture? I mean, I counted at one point over 63 oaks coming out of this property, which is unfortunate. But, okay, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Hi, I'm once again Christina Peters, 429 King of Prussia Road. So I'm a neighbor of this project, not an immediate one, but not far away, and go past it frequently. So I have a couple of questions. Am I understanding correctly that you are asking for relief on the size of the trees planted so that you'd be able to put in whips instead of the larger trees, and deer fencing as a sort of cost trade-off? Is that the idea?
Correct. We have a code compliant plan, so we meet all of it. We're not asking for any relief. We have presented an alternate plan for dialogue. If people think it's a good idea, we think it's a good idea to do the understory planting with the whips. If everyone says, no, that's not a good idea, we should do the by right plan, we're going to do the by right plan.
Okay, and so I've planted many a tree in my Radnor Township home over the last 25 years, and the problem with whips is that they need a lot of water. Is there a plan to water them so that they survive in that first year, or are you just kind of putting them in and hope for the best?
There would be a maintenance schedule, but you're absolutely right. They do take a little bit more care in that first year.
Okay. And can you explain to me I understand that the point about diversity and being able to get whips of some species that you can't get in a 3-inch diameter tree. Are we getting like the same number of trees, just smaller? Are we getting more trees? What's the plan?
So the code requires 270. We would be proposing 150 at the 3-inch size, and then 135 forest grade whips. So 285. So we're providing more than would be required.
A very, very small number more.
And then 1,800 linear feet of deer fencing. It's about a 2.5-acre area that would require the deer fencing. And the deer fencing there's a substantial cost to that. You got to put it in a good size, 8-foot high.
I know deer fencing. We live in Radnor. We know deer and deer fencing. Does the plan include any understory planting other than trees? Shrubs, forbs? No.
It's canopy and understory trees.
Just a bunch of little whips. So that's the trade-off that you're offering. I heard on your code-compliant plan that you're looking at planting some, a fair number of non-natives, London plane and Kwanzaa cherry. Why are we looking at those instead of sycamores and fringe trees? I ask in particular for this project because it is in an area where we've lost a lot of forested land lately. We've got more trees coming down in Fenimore Woods no matter what we do. We've had a lot of development that the habitat there is really being pressed, and it's not just like a number game on the trees. It's what services are these trees providing to the environment at this point there. It's really under pressure.
So we try to provide a pretty diverse palette when we go to look at these tree replacements. We try to pick understory canopy trees. We didn't have any red oak. I think somebody said maybe red oak, but we were using white and chestnut oak. We do have plane trees. We do have willow oak. We do have basswood. I'd say probably 90% of the species are native. We do have Kwanzaa cherry. If the commission doesn't like that species, we could certainly look at another native species. We've stayed away from fringe tree because it also gets attacked by the emerald ash borer as well. And, you know, we tried to, there was a comment about oaks, how many removed. As your arborist for your township will tell you, we've read the reports that he's prepared for other projects. They have found oak wilt in this part of the county. So, you know, the oaks are in trouble too now. So we're really trying to pick a diverse palette here so that we can, you know, think about the future and really have a good, you know, palette of plants, native, and we have some non-natives here. But if the commission wants all native, we can certainly go that route.
I would, from my point of view, I don't want complete natives. I don't want it. I think that's always a mistake to be that dramatic. I think the London plane tree is a tough tree and a good tree. So I have no problem with that at all.
Yeah, they're anthracnose resistant, right? So that's the reason for, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree. Any other comments from the commission or otherwise? So I'll make a motion for this, which is let's get the hazard tree report completed. Feel free to reach out to the township if you have any clarifying questions, and we'll make sure we get it right so that come next meeting we can seek an approval for you. And then also if we could update the plans to make sure that we include the large shade trees and make sure that you are planting the large shade trees per requirement. Did you have a comment before I?
So what I wanted to ask is actually if we could get a recommendation this evening, knowing that we will be back during our permitting process and everything else, because again, it's not like we're coming in and building a house on a lot, right? We probably have 12 to 15 months of approval runway still after today, right? And so, you know, and it sounds silly to say we'd like a recommendation now, knowing that we have that runway, but each piece falls kind of in place one after another.
I understand. I'm not comfortable with approving this until we get the updated plans and we take a look at them. But I'll welcome any comments from any others.
I mean, and that's how we're doing it at the Planning Commission now. I mean, we want it to be as clean as possible before we make any approvals. So,
yeah,
I think you're on base with this.
Right, and we did, you know, when we did meet, we provided that feedback in regards to the hazard tree report, and we don't have it tonight. So, if that were a different story, I think we could, you know, maybe work something out. But just out of the scope of the project and making sure we have everything buttoned up for the actual approval, because, you know, there are some significant revisions that need to be made regarding incorporating those additional large shade trees. And, you know, we want to make sure we have an official forum to talk through that.
Seth, do we want to have any discussion about entertaining the alternative plan or not, so they know what direction to go in?
I think in speaking, you know, we need to get with John, chat with him about it, and really, you know, think about it a little bit more, in my opinion, versus deciding tonight on one or the other.
We can leave it pending. You know, if we had to come back, we're happy to leave it pending. You know, we won't make any revisions to it, but we can leave that pending.
Sure. Yeah, definitely, you know, don't throw it in the trash. We want to take a look at it and think through it, and get this project right. So moving back to my motion. So making a motion to table this until we get revisions done to the plan to show the large canopy trees in the correct table and also reflected in the planting schedule, and then also receive a hazard tree report. We as a commission will also take a look at the alternative plan in the meantime, so that when you guys come back around next month, we can provide some guidance on, you know, what we would prefer. Do I have a second? All right, all in favor? Aye. All right, thank you for all of your efforts. I know this is a big project, but appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, so I think that wraps up all of the new grading permits. Moving on to tree removal without approval or clearing permits. None listed, none have snuck in, correct? All right. So we'll move into old business, and I'll try and make this brief. See if we can wrap this in 15 to 20 minutes. It's all good news. So a couple of updates. The ordinance update regarding the personnel of commission in regards to having someone on our commission be a part of Parks and Rec. That is still in the works. I spoke with Tammy. That's likely going to be on the BOC's agenda in the next couple of meetings here. So stay tuned. The ordinance update, the comprehensive update, in all transparency, things are busy, so it's kind of taken a back seat. In addition to the tree maintenance proposal, so I'd put something together with the comprehensive update with budgeting and everything else. I was not able to sneak that in, but Ricky, I'm going to reach out to you and see what we can maneuver in at this point in time. And then shade tree ordinance communication plan. So just one little note outside of the flyer that we've sent. We've obviously sent out our fall planting. I did spin up I'll call it a shade tree landing microsite, which does include some more information around us, and it links off to our flyer. Post planting and in between plantings, we'll look to send out our flyer, which communicates, our ordinance, the 6 tree requirement, all that fun stuff. Shifting quickly into new business. So our fall planting registration is fully underway. Let me bring up where we are currently. So we currently have 96 registrants, which is awesome. Our goal is, of course, planting 100 trees for residents. My plan would be to close this right around the 120, 130 mark, just so we have some buffer if people cancel or otherwise. And of course, we can use those folks that are net overflow for a waiting list in the spring. As a reminder, these are all large shade trees this year. We did provide on the registration form the listing of all of the 14 species for preference to pick. So we'll try and fulfill that as best as we can, but knowing that it is first come, first serve. And additionally, we haven't sent out this communication yet, but we are planning to, so it'll be a similar kind of flyer, if you will, calling for volunteers. I know Frank just recently sent out an email, and he's been socializing. We additionally have a registration form for volunteers, which is also located at radnortrees.com. Currently, we have 11 folks without marketing, if you will. So once we market, I'm hoping we'll add another at least 10 to 20 people. Likely we'll still have Cabrini students at the ready. The tools were purchased from Do It Best. Those are sitting in some corner of some building in the township. We'll keep that highly secret. They are marked for us, and those are the tools that we will use during the fall planting.
Seth?
Yes.
I think it would also be extremely important to recognize that Steve Schreiner's company is going to be providing volunteers also, especially since he's sitting in the room.
Fantastic. Yes. Thank you, Steve. Much appreciated. He let my daughter sit in his lovely, was it 50s, 40s? Man, got to keep going down. 1929 pickup truck. Pretty neat. But thank you, Steve. Much appreciated.
And we shouldn't forget that Steve Schreiner did all the park surveying for us a
Yes.
couple of years back. Thank you
Yes.
again for that.
And while we're thanking people, thank you to the Conservancy, 500 trees this fall. So we have plenty of trees to sign up for to plant. So in total, 650 trees in the township this fall, which is quite an astronomical number. I'm not keeping track, but I think that's probably the most ever in the fall. So good work to everyone. So the other couple of things I wanted to talk about were logistics a bit. Commissioner Abel gave me a contact at AT&T. So outside of the 100 residential trees, 50 we're slicing off for parks and or WBA placement. So Reed Taylor had identified some areas in the WBA. Most of the areas were on the back left side of North Wayne, like the AT&T Tower area, which is kind of barren. Knowing that we did a lot of good plantings, along Lancaster, North and South Wayne, we're starting to look for those back pockets to try and fill with our large shade trees. So I just spoke with the contact at AT&T today. We have a line of communication for roughly 15 to 20 trees to plant there. I don't want to state any approvals or names just yet, but it's looking good. But once we get that approval, I will certainly let everyone know. So in speaking logistics, so 50 residential trees are being planted by Tree Authority. 50 are going to be planted by Public Works and John Hosbach's crew. And then 30 will be planted in parks by volunteers. And then the other 20 will need to be planted. And until we have that commitment secured that we can plant those in the WBA, then we'll seek who will be planting those. We have a couple of options that we can toy around with who plants them, but Public Works will not be tapped to help plant those because they're busy enough. So I think that wraps up really the highlights. Does anyone have any questions regarding the fall planting? Seems straightforward. All right. So shade tree member recruitment. So would first like to thank Ginny for her full term of volunteerism. She's going to step down the end of this year. So thank you, Ginny, for all of your hard work. Yeah, that it has. Lots of trees have been planted, that's for sure. Ginny's spot will need to start recruiting for, and then also once we officially can recruit for someone that isn't a part of Parks and Rec, that will be upcoming. So I know Frank had sent someone over. I've spoken to a couple of people. So for those that might be happening to be listening, so feel free to send an application in the form of biography and just your interest in the Shade Tree Commission. And you can reach out to the township to get that to us. And then what do you do during trying to get a job? You are interviewed. That's what you are. It's late, sorry. You will be interviewed by the Board of Commissioners and then appointed, per recommendation by the board. So in any event, start socializing.
So Seth?
Yes.
The process is my candidate's going to put together the bio and the cover letter, and she's going to get it to you, and you'll get it to Bill White, or do you want to do it simultaneously?
We can get it to Leah and myself, and we can get it to, inevitably, it'll go to our township manager, Bill White, for recommendation to get it in front of the Board of Commissioners for.
Does the candidate need any recommendations? Like Frank Paris thinks you'd be a great candidate.
It's not necessary, but it doesn't hurt. I'm hoping we have 20 candidates and we have to pick from the best of the best, but we'll
I
see.
don't want any competition. I want my candidate and only my
Okay.
candidate.
Well, we'll see, Frank.
We'll see.
We are a fair commission. So I think that's it regarding new business. Does anyone have anything, comments regarding old or new business? Yes, sure. Public comment, by all means.
Christina Peters, one more time. If you're looking for places to put trees, a lot of the trees that were put in when Radnor Elementary School, a lot of old trees have died, new trees have failed. That there's plenty of space for trees that would be really seen by the children. It's a nice place for trees.
Great. Thank you.
Secondly, a lot of the trees, and I love them all, that we've put in lately are kind of being overwhelmed by invasive vines. On that, I see it on the Radnor Trail, trees covered with English ivy and porcelain berry. Same with the new trees that went in on that brand new trail that goes between Radnor Elementary and Harford Park. Seen mature trees pulled down on the margins of that park by invasive vines. So, obviously, what we'd like to see is more retention with some attack on those vines, rather than just kind of throwing these poor little trees into situations they're not going to be able to get through. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, we are working on a tree maintenance proposal. It's an uphill battle, but we're doing what we can. Yes, great.
Can you talk more about that, the tree maintenance?
Sure. Yep. So it's in the works, with the comprehensive update and all of the other things that are revolving around, because it really comes down to more than just tree maintenance proposal.
No, I know.
It's everything,
Yep.
green and otherwise. So it's definitely a big behemoth of a challenge to get the staff that's required
Yep.
to do something like this.
Yep.
Without drastically affecting, taxes and everything else. We want to be conscious of that, but also conscious of making sure that, all of the efforts that we're putting forth in planting these trees
Right.
are for not for naught, if you will.
Yeah.
So, from a Shade Tree Commission perspective, we have what's called a big tree planting line item. So not to say that we couldn't ever at some point shift some of our funds to help, I'll say, devine trees or, something of the sort. But that's, it's definitely top of all of our minds, and it's being worked on, so.
I only bring this up just because it's Laura Luker, Radnor Conservancy, Ward 4. I only just bring it up because this is actually, I think, probably one of the most important parts of, we can plant very easily. We cannot maintain, that maintenance piece has just been the
Sure.
problem.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So I'm happy to be part of whatever goes on with that.
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
I kind of was back in the day when we were looking into it with the manager before this. And I think it's a really big, important issue that the commissioners need to realize that this is what's lacking.
Yep,
Yeah.
totally agree. We're on the
Okay,
same page.
great.
Thank you.
Thanks.
I was reminded of something. So park placements. So I'd sent out an email to Steve Ledgerton and Ricky and.
Could we touch on one subject before we get to the park placements?
Yes.
I think Commissioner has a point she wants to.
Am I talking now?
Yes,
Okay.
you got it.
Sorry, you think I would know how this works. So last year during budget time, one of the things that we did bring up was having putting forth a maintenance plan in this year's budget. So we are in that budget process, the budget book. So there's nothing in our budget. Like, were you guys able to, because we kind of charged the Shade Tree to come up with a plan for us. And I know you guys have been dealing with a million things, and you guys are doing a fantastic job, so please don't take this as like you didn't do something. But I was really hoping, and I think there are others on the Board of Commissioners, that we would have some recommendations from you guys as to how we might be able to start a tree maintenance plan. Certainly, you're absolutely right, Seth. It's definitely going to be an expensive proposition. We know that. We've been talking about that. So I think when I first got on the board, we talked about nothing had been done for 20 years. So now I've been on the board for 5 years. So let's say 25 years. Except for, I think episodic, we've got to take these trees down and things like that. But just to start to talk about, and budget for and plan, how are we going to kind of lay this in? And does it look like additional staff? Does it look like, additional funding to outsource it? So what can be some of the priorities? Do we have nothing in our budget that so the budget book has been prepared. Actually, mine should be sitting out there. We're going to start talking about the budget at our next meeting in October. So
yeah, I'll take full ownership of this. I just haven't had the bandwidth to strategize and complete this. But I do have a draft proposal. The next steps would be to complete that, reach out to all those that need to be involved. But my initial recommendation, based off of what I've put together so far, was looking back at tree removals that we do annually, averaging that out, taking into account divining and similar operations, and the recommendation would be to at least initially outsource, just like we do with tree removals. I don't think it makes sense to have an on-staff arborists or a set of tree removal folks at Radnor Township. That's something that makes more sense to outsource in my eyes. So definitely, something that's top of mind, but again, just as volunteers up here today, just finding the time to make it happen is the problem. So
yeah, and please don't, this is not a criticism, and I don't mean for it to be that. And I know you guys have done so many things. It's really, so incredible, the work that you guys have done and all the contributions you've made to the township. So do we think, and I cannot direct, so I'm only one commissioner. I cannot direct that in any way, but I will ask, so Mr. Foster, who's here as part of the staff, do you think there's any way we can at least have some sort of conversation around this as part of the budget process, or is everything kind of set in stone? I mean, I know that Mr. White gave his initial presentation to us at our last meeting, very 30,000 foot view. So at least so that we, if we need to start to at least set aside some dollars to start to plan for something or something like that. I don't know, Seth, if you guys are even in that position to make even a minimal recommendation or something like that. And again, it could be too late in the process. I'm not sure. But is there a possibility that you guys could maybe powwow with Mr. White and see if there's something that we could at least start to talk about in this budget?
Yeah. Once I started digging into it, I did realize it was too late. But I mean, Ricky and I could always, try and have that conversation. And I mean, I'm willing to provide my draft proposal, knowing that it's not fully baked. I think it gives a decent idea as to at least minimally where we should start. I think previously what tripped us up was we were trying to do, here is everything, which was a lot. But I think if we start small, create a good platform and framework for what maintenance does look like, have an avenue for a defined budget year over year, have a strategy for using, contractors or outsourcing for doing, maybe it's a once a year thing. For $50,000, we go around to known areas and, do some pruning and devining. That factored in with knowing that on an annual basis, we have to do these ad hoc tree removals, potentially the offset of if we do this maintenance more and more and more, we won't have to spend the money to remove the trees. But, that is somewhat of a toss-up because we're not going to go around and inject all of the ash trees in Radnor Township. But, it will definitely help. So, but yeah, how about you, Ricky, you and I, we can have a quick convo maybe tomorrow or Friday.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And to Commissioner's point, I could reach out to the Finance Director and also Township Manager and just see from the budget standpoint what's possible on that end so that we know what we're working with.
Right. And just to clarify, the ad hoc removals that are done annually, those come out of the general fund per se, right? So there's no earmarked line item?
We do have an earmarked fund, but depending on how much happens in the year, how many trees have to come down, usually that budget gets blown out the water.
So what is the actual name of that line item? Is it greenery maintenance or tree maintenance, or is it a?
It would be contractor services under tree removal.
Okay. So theoretically, that line item could be used today for, with BOC's approval to do not just tree removals, but potentially, we'll talk about it. End conversation.
I think you should definitely, Ricky, and you guys should meet with the staff and see where that goes.
Sounds good. All right, we'll see what we can do.
So I have some ideas too that I think we could actually, what the township sends now, could get a lot more done by doing it a certain way.
Sure.
But I can talk to you guys offline about that.
Yeah, okay.
I think it would be a lot. I added it up one year. I think there was about $400,000 or $500,000 that was spent on tree removals to different companies. So I think I like your idea where you were going, but I think there's a certain way that can be done that we could get a ton more done for about what is spent now.
Sure. Okay. Well, so let's see what we can do and make happen this year. Okay. Hazardous trees. Ricky, do you want to speak to, or anyone, any of these trees? Looks like there's a bunch of...
Yeah, no, everything was reviewed by the township arborist, and it all met his qualifications to be removed.
Sounds good, thank you. I'm just quickly going through all the pictures. Looks like we have a lot of dead trees. Okay. Trees removed by Radnor Township. Ricky, you want to give us a quick overview?
Yeah, this was the same thing. The township arborist was called in to opine on these trees, and they all met his standards to do. But the one I will touch on in particular, I mean, the biggest sizes that we see there on Church Road across from Chanticleer. You see those 4 ash trees that were removed. Huge sizes. I wish there was something we could do, but they were in decline, and we had to have those removed ASAP. You also see the one at the Willows Cottage. That was another one that there wasn't too much that we could do to save it. And just to give a separate point, the one at Hare Park, that tree is also a huge heritage tree, ash tree, but to not try to remove that so quick, we were able to at least prune it for the time being to try to, buy us some time. Because of the size and magnitude and basically where that location of that tree is. But the one at the Willows Cottage, there was nothing that we could do, no pruning or anything to buy some more time, so it had to be removed.
Okay. Thank you, Ricky. And I realized I didn't finish my thought. So Frank is going to lead the charge with determining spots for trees in parks, along with Steve, Ricky, and John, and whoever else wants to be involved. So we'll likely, do it somewhat similar to how we did it in the spring. Pick, 3 or 4 parks that need trees. I know there was a couple of recent removals in some of the parks. So we'll plan to replant there. And same setup as in the spring. We'll meet at the Willows. Because we are planting bare roots this year, we will go through how to plant bare roots with all of the volunteers. We'll do some breakfast. Then we'll all disperse to our parks, plant some trees, come back to the Willows, do some lunch, and off to the races. So Frank is graciously volunteered to coordinate placements, and he's also working on getting donations for food for breakfast and lunch. So that's the quick summary.
Seth, if I could I
Yes.
jump in? Just so you know, I mean, since you brought up the possible locations
Sure.
park-wise, I did have the park supervisor kind of go over what locations he already thought, so he could, work with Frank and also John to get their opinion. But just in his opinion, he gave me about 6 locations. Cowan Park was one. The Willows is always in need of more trees. The Nature Park is another location. Ditmar Park, where we had probably in the teens trees coming down, some in the woods and then some in the playing areas. Hartford Park and also some along Radnor Trail. So
Great.
those were just some of the locations that in his surveying and looking around the township, he thought were in need of some reviving.
Great. Thank you, Ricky. So it sounds like we have those 30 trees that we earmarked will be gone pretty quickly, which is good.
Is there any possibility those 20 trees that are earmarked right now for WBA might be made available for the parks?
It's a possibility.
When would we know?
So the contact that I spoke to today, he said he should have an answer within the next couple of weeks. So here's what I would say. If we don't have a clear answer by October 15th, we'll say we're doing 50 in the parks. That sounds good.
And as we did last time, Ricky, you'll recall, we did, 10 trees per park, 10 volunteers per park, and that worked out pretty well. So that might be a process to repeat.
Yeah, whatever plan you feel like, I'll let you and Steve kind of work on that behind the scenes, and whatever you guys feel like works best, I'm in total agreement. I trust you.
Perfect. Sounds good. One thought, planting trees in high-vis areas is a good thing. So want to try and get those 20 trees in the WBA, but if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. I know there's a lot of traffic in the parks too, but if we can get trees on the mind, that's good. And Ricky, did we get the replacements in the WBA? I saw that was on one of the BOC agendas, but did that happen yet?
No, it was approved. I think Steve Norsini is actually, and John Hasback are scheduling that company to kind of come in. But they've already started communicating with them. So I think they have a date, but I don't want to speak when it is. But they have been communicated with and contacted for the process to start.
Okay. But it's going to happen this fall, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Awesome. Good. Cool. Any other public participation before we close? All good? All right. This meeting is closed. Thank you.